How's it going, guys? My name is Kevin Reyes. I am a DP out of LA Orange County area, and today I'm stoked. We are going to be taking a look at the brand new red V-Raptor. That's my old man step. Today we are at my buddy's studio, my boy Derek.
Up, how are you?
My boy, good. I want to introduce you guys to my buddy Derek. Derek, give him the ones and twos.
What's up, guys? My name's Derek Angulo. I run an agency in Newport called Advisory. We've got this studio built out where we make a bunch of content with guys like Kevin. Want to check it out?
Come on in, guys. Derek is the man. He actually owns a Raptor. He just got it in and he said it was cool if I come over and test it, so let's go check it out. And this is the first time I'm actually even touching this camera, and here it is. So, wow, look at that. It's a lot lighter than I anticipated, even with this base plate and this handle on. Got the IDX micros on there. Shout out to IDX. Look at that. That is beautiful. I'm gonna try to do as many tests as I can. I'm not gonna get all of them. I'm gonna try to get through the most important ones. I think we're gonna do dynamic range. We're gonna do colors. We're gonna do matching it, obviously, with the KOMODO low light stuff. So I'm gonna try to get into all those, but I don't know if I'm gonna finish it. I just talked to Derek and he said we might be able to do a part 2 in the future where we can do frame rates and all the other things I may miss today. But let's go set up the KOMODO, set up these scenes, and we'll be right back with you. Let's get the KOMODO. KOMODO's coming out to play. So we're rigging up the KOMODO and the Raptor. Okay, let's get some V-mounts. Kind of a size comparison.
Did you grow thin?
One of the questions I got on social media was comparing the startup times between both cameras as well as the black shading. So this might be a good opportunity to do that. And what I'll do is I'll use my phone timer to time them both starting up. We're gonna have to do this at the exact same time, Anthony. Are you ready? It's gonna be like a 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember that tempo. We're musicians, so where are the buttons at? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like the Raptor beat it maybe by like a second. We're gonna do a black shade in just a sec, but one thing I'm noticing as I'm navigating down to where you black shade the camera is the Raptor's kind of response. It's a little snappier than the KOMODO's. The KOMODO still has that kind of delay that you're used to from the DSM-C2, just a slight delay. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. It's about double the amount of time for the Raptor. Yeah, good to know. For our camera setup, we've got essentially both cameras side by side. For our settings, we've got them both shooting the highest quality they can as far as resolution goes. So for the KOMODO, that means 6K 17:9. For the Raptor, that is 8K 17:9. I'm shooting these both in medium quality. They are both running the exact same lens, a pretty neutral lens. It's the Canon L 35mm 1.4 prime lens. We are not doing any filters, any ND, so we get consistent looks across both cameras. Then we'll switch from the wide 35mm to the 70-200 on both of them, get a tighter secondary alternative shot, just so we can really see into those skin tones and see what it's doing. Our basic setup, it's essentially an interview setup. We have a key light. We're double breaking it by a softbox that it's in, as well as a 6x6 of muslin. And then in the back, we've got actually a Nanlite Forza 500 in a big softbox that is punching up into the ceiling, and that's just giving us an ambient as well as like a subtle backlight. We also have another light back there that's kind of giving us some ambient in the background. And that's kind of our setup, just a basic lighting setup. Nothing special, nothing pretty. This is not meant to be cinematic. It's mainly meant to just kind of show what the camera's colors looking like and how they compare to each other. Okay, so we've got our first test set up, and we're gonna test for just matching colors. We're gonna kind of combine a couple tests, matching colors as well as skin tones. I don't have all the skin tones available. It's me and Anthony. All right, let's jump in. All right, before we get into this footage, we will be jumping back and forth between here and the studio. So yes, I did change my clothes. No, I did not take a shower. But just a couple quick notes. I'm uploading this all in 4K, so hopefully that will allow everyone to be able to see the fidelity and the detail of all the footage that we're going to be looking at today. All right, so let's look at some of these interview shots, starting with the KOMODO, and this is Anthony. Looking great as ever. Right out of camera, I think it looks really good. There's nothing surprising here. I'd expect most cameras to look good with proper lighting. So I had no doubt it was going to look good. Now let's look at the Raptor, and the same thing. It looks great right out of the camera. One of the things I'm noticing right off the bat is just how much bigger the VistaVision frame is compared to the Super 35 on the KOMODO. There's just so much more real estate. I've been shooting Super 35 pretty much my entire career, so looking at this frame is a big adjustment for me. I can tell why people love the large format so much, and remember, these are both on 35mm primes. Now let's look at these side by side to compare colors, and right off the bat, I'm seeing a very close match. You can tell these colors were cut from the same cloth. Real quick, Anthony's laughing right here because I took my shirt off behind the camera to make him smile a little bit. He's so damn serious all the time. Jeez. Alright, now we're going to switch over to my darker Filipino skin tones. First shot is the KOMODO, and just as expected, it looks just fine. Colors look great out of the camera. No grading done with this, just the simple Rec 709 conversion LUT. And same with the Raptor, it's looking just fine. So just as expected, individually these cameras are looking just fine, but what we really want to compare is like images. So we're going to put them side by side and really kind of dive in and look at these colors and how they compare to each other. Looking at both of these frames, they both look really close. There's not really much difference that I can see just at a first glance. They pretty much look identical, but let's jump to the 70mm to get a closer look and kind of focus in on the skin tones. I think that's where we're going to be able to find a little bit more difference. So looking closer at the skin tones, at first I thought the KOMODO leaned a little bit warmer than the Raptor, but after playing with it, to my eye, the KOMODO is actually a little more saturated than the Raptor. It's not necessarily warmer. It just has a little bit more saturation. Watch as I bump the saturation a tad bit to the Raptor, and it's nearly an identical match. To me, the colors are the same. KOMODO is just more saturated. So now I'm going to crop in on the Raptor frame to make it a little bit more easier to compare the two. And again, the KOMODO is just a hair more saturated, which gives it an overall warmer look. But again, if I bump the saturation just a hair in the midtones on the Raptor, it's basically a match. Jumping over to my skin tones, again, I'm seeing a little more saturation in the KOMODO, but you can see when I bump the saturation in the mids, the colors match perfectly. Well, just about perfectly. I also shot a color card and compared the shots over the vector scope, and I really couldn't see a clear difference in where the colors were landing. Back to the studio for the next test. So now I want to test out dynamic range. You've seen this test before. We're going to expose the same image, but we're going to overexpose it by 2 stops. Then we're going to overexpose it by 4 stops, and in post, we'll bring it back down to see what kind of highlights both cameras retain and see which one may or may not do it better than the other. And then we'll do the same for underexposing. Underexpose 2 stops, then underexpose 4 stops, pull it back up in post, and again, see what kind of shadows we can retain. To adjust exposure, we're going to use our shutter. So here I have the Raptor crops to match the KOMODO again, so we can kind of get a good comparison. And to my eyes, both cameras retain highlights really well, although the Raptor does seem to hold them a little better. Here we're looking at the KOMODO between all exposures. Here we're looking at the Raptor between all exposures. And here we're looking at both the KOMODO and Raptor between all exposures. I think the KOMODO, it's either tinting to red in the shadows or it's getting more saturated in the shadows as you expose higher. And the Raptor maintains the roll-off just a little more gracefully. Overall, I think both of these shots are definitely usable, even at 4 stops overexposed. Now, I was supposed to do 6 stops overexposed, but I forgot. We had 1 day to do all these tests, so I apologize for that. Please forgive me. But we did get 6 stops underexposed, so let's take a look at that. Now looking at underexposure, I'm seeing that the more underexposed, the more green tint you get over the image, which is probably caused by the chroma noise from lifting the shadows. But yeah, it just gets worse and worse on both cameras. However, the Raptor, again, is holding on a little bit better. It's still got the green tint as well as the noise, but not as blocky and messy as the KOMODO. So again, here we're looking at the Komodo between all underexposures. And here's the Raptor between all underexposures. And here's both cameras and all underexposures. So overall, I'm seeing generally a better performance from the Raptor over the Komodo in both over and underexposures. I know I missed the 6 stops overexposed. I wish I would have got that because it would have been nice to see, but we only had 1 day, so I apologize again. But yeah, it generally seems that both cameras handle retention a little bit better than they handle shadows, which is on par with most CMOS sensors. Okay, back to the studio for the next test. All right, so now we're gonna do some low light stuff using the full sensors of each of the reds. We're gonna basically see, the noise floor, how they perform. I know you can change the ISO in post, but we're gonna see what they look like right at camera. All right, let's take a look at this low light footage starting with the Komodo, and here's what the Komodo looks like at ISO 800. And here's the Raptor at ISO 800. I do see a little grain on my 5K monitor, but by the time this is uploaded to YouTube or Vimeo or whatever, it may just look like blocky artifacts, so it's kind of tough. Again, you should be able to view this in 4K, so hopefully the compression isn't terrible. But from what I'm seeing on my computer, this is totally usable. Not enough noise for me to really care. So here's both these images zoomed in at 400%. And it makes the noise a little easier to see. And side by side at 400%, the Raptor noise is a tiny bit smaller than the Komodo, which makes sense. Bigger sensor, smaller noise. But again, hardly noticeable, especially once you upload it to YouTube or Vimeo. I'm also noticing a greenish tint coming from the Komodo in the deeper shadows and the deeper blacks. This is something I noticed actually on the Gemini sensor, and it might be true with all the other sensors as well, but there is definitely a green tint to the shadows, which is not necessarily something I don't like. I kind of like what it does to an overall image. It gives it that kind of filmic look. I had one of the users on social media asked to compare the Super 35 mode on the Raptor to the already Super 35 on the Komodo. Not only the framing, but they also wanted to look at noise levels. Does it differ from the full frame on the VistaVision? So we're gonna go into Super 35 mode on the Raptor and shoot both of those in a dark scene to see what the noise is looking like in those shadows. Let's take a look. Let's look at both of these frames. Noise floor is totally forgivable in both. Here's each frame side by side. It's interesting, the Raptor, even in Super 35 mode, is still a little bit bigger than the Komodo. To me, the noise looks about the same. And here I'm focusing on the noise on my face because there's not a background light in the Komodo shot. And again, you can see a little bit of that green tint in the shadows. Okay, now let's compare the Raptor low light performance between its full 8K sensor and its 6K Super 35 mode sensor. To me, the noise on the 8K full sensor may look a touch smaller. It's a small difference. It's a tiny difference, at least to my eye. Again, not something you notice once it's been uploaded, but it's nice to know you can use smaller Super 35 sensors on this guy. Back to the studio for the next test. Yeah. So now we're going to do an autofocus test using both of these cameras. We're going to compare the two. I believe they're probably the same performance. We're going to see what the autofocus looks like with tracking a subject, a simple walking subject, and maybe we'll do some running as well. I don't know, I'm a little old. Again, this is in beta. This isn't the final firmware build for the autofocus, so we may see improvements, but we'll see what it looks like right now and how much progress that Red has made in the autofocus category. Let's do it. I have a feeling both of these cameras have the same autofocus build in them, but let's check it out anyway. So we're going to start on the 35mm and then we'll switch over to the 70mm to see if there's any improvements in lenses. So here we have Anthony walking at a slower pace in a decently lit scene. And the Komodo autofocus is tracking him, although it is a little behind, it's trying to catch up, it's losing him slightly, and it's not tracking him as smooth as I'd like. It's a little bumpy, it's a little jumpy, not super smooth. You can see when he stops at his mark and he kind of rocks back and forth how jumpy it's being to track his face. I also don't know why Anthony looks like he's about to murder somebody right here. Jeez. And here is the Raptor's continuous autofocus. And kind of the same thing. It's trying hard to keep up. It's jumping a bit, losing him momentarily until it finally catches up. Still pretty jumpy and harsh, and Anthony still wants to murder somebody. And now let's compare side by side. And from the looks of it, they both perform pretty similar. I don't see one having an edge over the other necessarily. And Anthony is literally so scary walking up. Like, I don't want to mess with this dude. Chill, Anthony, chill. Next, we have me doing a faster walk, and trust me, I don't look any better. I'm still seeing kind of the same performance. Did a little bit better there, but it's still a little jumpy. And here's the Raptor. Kind of same performance again. We're still seeing those jumps. It's not as smooth, and I don't look any better than Anthony does, so I have no room to talk. I look like a deer in the headlights. It's almost as if it doesn't matter whether you're tracking something fast or slow. It's kind of just jumpy either way. Kind of performs at the same level at whichever speed it seems like. Now here's me running. Oh boy, I definitely need to run, that's for sure. I could use a little bit more of that, but again, we're seeing that both the KOMODO and the Raptor, they're tracking me fine. It's just the transitions, it's not as smooth. And here we have a side-by-side of the autofocus tracking the run, but again, the speed, it's almost like speed doesn't matter. Here we are, faster walk on the 70 to 200 at 70 millimeters. It's still pretty jumpy. Geez, fix your face, Kevin. Oh my gosh. And then we have the Raptor performing as expected, the exact same. What is my face right there? Here's a side-by-side of both KOMODO and Raptor. Fast walk with the Canon L 70 to 200 at 70 millimeters. It's not really better or worse on either lens. It looks like it's fairly consistent. The last autofocus test is the same thing except in low light. So let's look at the KOMODO. It looks like KOMODO's having a pretty tough time in the low light, focusing on my face. Looks like it's hunting there a little. Let's look at the Raptor in low light with the same lens. Performing a little worse in low light, which is forgivable. You know, not all autofocus systems work well in low light. Let's see if it hunts like the KOMODO did. Looks like it's not hunting as much. Oh yeah, it's hunting. And here is the side-by-side. So the autofocus in both of these cameras really like well-lit scenes. Still got a little bit of room for improvement. It seems as though it doesn't matter how fast the subject is moving, and it doesn't really matter what lenses, it's kind of the same. So hopefully we'll see improvements there. Now I know we're still in beta, but I still don't see myself using autofocus at all, even in an interview setting. But it's cool that Red is implementing it, but I still think they have a long way to go to compete with Canon and Sony. Just my opinion. Go easy on me. Final thoughts on the new Red V-Raptor VistaVision. I think it's an awesome camera. Obviously, I love the ergonomics. I love the snappier menu. I love the menu layout. I love the new kind of shortcut menu you can go to by tapping the up arrow. That stuff is super sweet. Probably my favorite feature is the large sensor. I'm a massive fan for so many reasons. Is it worth the upgrade if you already have a KOMODO? First of all, I'm a firm believer that spending over $10K for a camera body is probably a bad investment, especially the way cameras are being released and how frequently they're being released in today's world. So the answer for me is no, for now, but everyone's different. My needs in my career are different from your needs. Just because it's not worth the upgrade for me doesn't necessarily mean it's not worth the upgrade for you, but I can rent this thing any day. It's like you can get a whole Red package or even an Alexa package for a bag of chips, and so it's pretty easy for me to get. But I can honestly see the value in full frames, like large format. A lot of people think it's overrated, but I think it's pretty awesome, and it really has a nice place within the industry. I don't think Super 35 is going to go anywhere. I still think it's awesome. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just love what you can do and what you can achieve with a full frame. And remember, They're just tools. Stay tuned for part number 2. I've got new red stuff coming out soon. I've got new Leica versus modern lenses, comparing the two. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm going to be working on throughout the holidays and into next year. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you to the advisory crew, and thank you, Anthony Souza, for making all of this possible. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff for all the content that's going to be coming out soon. And until next time, God bless you. Peace.